So far we've talked about a lot of voice leading issues, but we've only looked at chords that are a fifth apart. Let's now turn to chords that are second apart. This will allow us actually to complete a 1-4-5 chord progression, right? Because the 1 chord going to 4 is a fifth apart or a fourth apart, and then the 4 going to 5 is a second apart, and the 5 going back to 1 is a fifth apart. So we'll be able to voice lead a 1-4-5 chord progression very successfully and with stylistic accuracy. Now, I want to show you, though, some very bad voice leading as per classical music right away, because this is kind of voicing that is totally fine in other styles of music, but it really can't be used in classical music. Let me show you. And this is the thing. With chords that are a fifth apart, we saw that there was one common tone, right? Well, chords that are a second apart have no common tones. So let me get a voicing up here of the 4 chord. Again, we're in C major. So we have the 4 chord, and we want to voice lead this to the 5 chord. And you say, oh, well, that's like kind of easy because we just do that, right? Because we have 4 chord going to 5 chord, and actually it doesn't sound awful. And in fact, if you come from a pop background, this would be a very normal kind of progression. This is completely fine. But stylistically in classical music, this isn't really possible. Why? Well, now I introduce one more rule that you should be aware of. Notice that we have here a fifth between the lower voices, and we have a fifth here between the lower voices. This is what we call parallel fifth. Notice that we have an octave between alto and bass, and an octave here between alto and bass. The same voices have the same intervals of a fifth or an octave in consecutive chords. Okay? This is what we call parallel fifths. This is what we call parallel octaves. And in classical music, you avoid them in this strict voice leading that we see here. So this you won't see in classical music. I have to be very specific about this. In this homophonic, homorhythmic kind of texture, you're never going to see this. So what do you see, and how do we voice lead it then? How should we think about it? Well, we should think about it as a non-common tone approach. So the best way to go about this then let's erase this. Okay, so this guy goes up, this bass goes up, so let's have the other ones go down to the nearest chord tone. Easy enough. Good. The C, the nearest chord tone in G, in the G major chord, is the B natural. For the F, it's the D. And for the A, it's the G, like that. Now this is actually the proper way to voice lead this. And if you look closely, we don't have any parallel fifths or parallel octaves. Now, some of you may say, wait a second, I see a fifth here, you see this? There's this G. Here we have a G, an F and a C. Yeah, that's a fifth. And here we have a G and a D, that's a fifth. That's parallel fifths, right? No. This is an important thing to understand. I raise this because when I've worked with students, sometimes they get confused and this question comes up. That's why I want to be very clear about what parallel fifths and parallel octaves are. Look, in any chord, you're going to have fifths and you're going to have octaves. That can't be avoided. What can be avoided is that those fifths and octaves in one chord aren't in the same voices as in the next chord. So to review, here we have a fifth between bass and tenor. When we go over here, we have the fifth again between bass and tenor. The octave between bass and alto. When we get to the next chord, bass and alto, octave. Let's look here. Where's our fifth? Well, our fifth here is between the bass and the tenor, as we had before. Where's our fifth here? It's between the bass and the alto. Ah, the fifth changed, voices. So that's fine. Octave, bass and alto, and now it's bass and soprano. Ah, it shifted. So in order to have parallel octaves and parallel fifths, the fifths and octaves have to stay in the same voices from one chord to the next. Otherwise, you may very well have perfectly fine voice leading. Let's try another one here with, this is all closed structure, so let's do an open structure one. So we want to have that, and then we want to get to the 5 chord, so we need a G. And let's move everybody down to the next chord tone. So that's pretty easy with the tenor. Moves down by a step to the G. Our soprano is going to move down to the B, and our alto is going to move down to the D. And again, if we go back to these principles of voice leading that I was mentioning before, you know, I was saying keep common tones. If you can't keep common tones, like you have in this case, or you don't want to keep common tones, move the voices by a step. If you can't use a step, move the smallest interval possible. Well, that's exactly what we have here. Oh, and then I also said include contrary motion if possible. Well, here contrary motion is completely possible. We move everything by step if we can, as we see here. This guy, we can't move by step. We have to move by a small leap, but it's the smallest leap necessary in order to get to a chord tone.